Straight Shift with the Car Chick, the podcast that's all about cars, buying, selling, fixing, and driving, and sometimes running fast if you're the car chick. Now, here she is.
Hey everyone, and welcome to the Straight Shift. It is a leap year, which means we have 29 days in February instead of 28, which for me meant I had one more day to get my podcast recorded because it's been a totally crazy busy month. And I got to the end of the month and got a whole bunch of cars delivered and remembered, oh crap, I have to record my podcast still. So I'm personally grateful for the extra day. But if you think about it, leap year is just kind of a weird concept anyway. I mean, first of all, why did February have 28 days when all of the other months have 30 or 31? I mean, couldn't we have borrowed a couple days from a couple months that had 31 days and made February 30 and evened everything out a little bit more? It just doesn't make any sense to me. So, in the spirit of things that are weird and don't necessarily make any sense, I wanted to do a fun podcast today. Traffic laws in the US are fairly standard across the country because they are based on safety and one would think on common sense. However, as most of us know, common sense is not so common. Therefore, there are some laws on the books in many states that just make you shake your head and go, what the f-? I mean, seriously, how did this situation occur that they actually needed to make a traffic law about this? Some of these laws are simply antiquated and have just not been taken off the books because people are lazy in government and they just didn't feel like going back through and weeding through all the ones that were out of date. And then there's some that are, quite frankly, discriminatory. And then there are some that are just so ridiculous it will make you spit your coffee out when you hear about them. So today I wanted to share some of these with you. And I have gone through and looked each one of these up to make sure, yes, it is indeed still on the law books in these states. Personally, I just couldn't believe it, and I wanted to make sure that I was truly giving you accurate, if ridiculous, information. A lot of these traffic laws are statewide. Some of them are local ordinances pertaining to a certain city or local principality, in which case I'll let you know that. But let's just jump right in. This podcast may be a little longer today simply because the number of these ridiculous laws is in itself ridiculous. I was really surprised. For example, in Colorado, it is illegal to drive a black car on Sunday in the city limits of Denver. I am 100% sure this is not actually enforced these days, but it is still on the books. I'm not really sure what the city of Denver had against black cars. Perhaps they were rebelling against Henry Ford, saying you can get the Model T in any color you want as long as it's black. I don't know. But if you have a black car and you're driving on Sundays in Denver, watch out. It is technically illegal. Now, over in Minnesota, you might want to rethink buying that fancy red sports car because it is illegal to drive down specifically Lake Street in Minneapolis in a red car any day of the week. So no red cars on Lake Street in Minneapolis. I have no idea why. In Texas, you must have windshield wipers to register a car. And that is true in most states. That's a very reasonable law. The reason that it's funny in Texas is that you don't actually have to have the windshield itself, just the wipers to register the car. Maybe not having the windshield makes it easier to shoot your guns out the front of the car because that is also, it's perfectly legal to have loaded weapons in your cars in Texas. So I'm not really sure. I'm just trying to visualize how windshield wipers are going to work without the actual windshield. Now in Connecticut, speaking of hunting from your car, that's not legal. Even if your car is painted hunter orange, which it specifically states in the law, still not legal to hunt from it in Connecticut. In New Mexico, and this one's interesting, It's illegal for cab drivers to reach out and pull potential customers into their taxis. I mean, do they have a problem not, getting enough taxi business in New Mexico that they have to kidnap their customers in order to make money? And nowadays, does this law apply to Uber and Lyft drivers as well, or is it only against the taxi drivers? Because that would give the taxi drivers yet another reason to hate Uber and Lyft. So just be careful when you're in New Mexico and you see a taxi driver. They might try to pull you into their car, but it is illegal for them to do so. Some laws apply not to us as drivers, but to the police. So, for example, in Idaho, there's a local law in one city where the police must honk their horn or flash their lights, either one, and then wait exactly 3 minutes before breaking up any romantic encounters that are going on inside a car. So, if the police are going to bust you for having sex in your car, they have to give you a 3-minute warning for you to finish up what you're doing and get your clothes back on. Because it's just polite. In Washington, just next door to Idaho, they probably have no crime there because motorists with criminal intentions are required by law to stop at the city limits and entering any town. So I guess they have to keep their criminal activity outside of city limits. But if they're going into a town and they have criminal intentions, they have to stop before they enter the town's limits and telephone the chief of police and let him or her know. So apparently there's no crime in any town or city in the state of Washington. That's awesome. And finally, in Maryland, specifically in the town of Rockville, and this is one I am never ever going to be able to drive in Rockville, Maryland, because it is illegal to swear inside a motor vehicle. I couldn't do it. I would just be arrested as soon as I hit the city limits. So if you're driving through Rockville, Maryland, no cussing in your car. Some laws apply to when it is appropriate and not appropriate to honk your horn. For example, in Arkansas, it is illegal to honk your horn after 9 p.m. if you're in the vicinity of a restaurant that sells either sandwiches and or cold beverages. Well, what if it's a coffee shop and they only sell warm beverages? Or what if it's a steakhouse and they serve great steaks? What is it about sandwiches and cold beverages? I mean, first of all, are there sandwich shops that are even open after 9 p.m. in Arkansas? I don't know. But maybe they think that if the sandwich shop is open that late, the employees are really tired. And if you honk your horn, you might scare them and they might cut off their finger while they're trying to cut your sandwich in half. I don't know. But in Mississippi, this one makes a little more sense. In Oxford, Mississippi, it's illegal to honk your horn because it might scare all the nearby horses. Apparently, they've got a lot of horses. Honking your horn does tend to scare horses, so no honking your horn in Oxford, Mississippi. The horses' well-being is of utmost importance there. Now, in a suburb of St. Louis, Missouri, it is illegal to honk another driver's horn. You can honk your own horn, but you cannot honk anybody else's horn. Whether that restricts passengers from leaning over and taking control away from the driver and honking the horn whenever they feel like it, or perhaps there are random people running up to cars with open windows that are stopped at traffic lights and reaching in and honking their horns against the driver's will. I don't know. Maybe it's just a consent issue, but you're not allowed to honk anybody else's horn in University City, Missouri. Only honk your own horn. In New Jersey, on the other hand, residents are required by law to honk their horn before passing another motor vehicle under any circumstances. Now, I have driven in New Jersey, and everyone is honking their horn all the time. So I don't know if they're just doing that to make sure that they're always in compliance with the honk before passing law, or, they're just in New Jersey. But everybody is always honking their horn there, so I think they're pretty safe with that law. Now, in Illinois, it's illegal to drive a car without a steering wheel. I'm sure this law must date back to the early days of motoring when A steering wheel was not the only mechanism for actually steering the car, but apparently they felt the steering wheel was the safer choice, so none of the other types of steering devices were legal. But just so you know, you got to have a steering wheel if you're going to drive your car in the state of Illinois. Now, in Kentucky, they're very concerned about the safety of vehicles and the vehicles having consent as well, because there is a law that prevents you from molesting any vehicle. And this is specifically in Fort Thomas, Kentucky. So I'm not really sure if there's a bunch of perverts that live there that are out molesting vehicles. And they don't really define what they mean by molest, but it just kind of gives me the creeps. Like, I really wouldn't want anyone molesting Maggie. So if you're in Fort Thomas, Kentucky, keep your hands to yourself and don't molest the vehicles. Some of the laws I talked about are common sense related, and apparently they have to make laws because nobody has any common sense in these states. In the state of Georgia, it's illegal to spit from a car or a bus. Note, there is no law prohibiting you from spitting from an SUV or a pickup truck. Which, you're in Georgia, so it is totally okay for you to spit from the back of your pickup truck, or probably from the front of your pickup truck. But you're just not allowed to spit from a car or a bus. So just be aware of that. Refrain from spitting. Just make sure you're in a truck if you do so. Now, that is really topped by the neighboring state of Alabama. In Alabama, statewide, it is illegal to drive while wearing a blindfold. Let's just think about that for a second. Who was driving with a blindfold that caused them to have to make this an actual law? You would think that it would be an obviously bad idea, but apparently there are enough morons in the state of Alabama that have tried it and caused them to have to make an actual state law about it. So, no driving blindfold in the state of Alabama. I guess that applies to us on the racetrack too when we're racing down in Birmingham at Barber Motorsports Park, but we don't race blindfolded either, so. Now in Oregon, by law, you must yield right-of-way to pedestrians when you are driving on the sidewalk. So that, I guess, implies that it's legal to drive on the sidewalk in Oregon as long as you yield to the pedestrians. That might actually work for Maggie because she's small enough, and there have been occasions where I have kind of sneaked onto the sidewalk and then into the parking lot, or, because she fits and it was convenient to do so. But of course, I'm always going to yield the right of way to pedestrians. So obviously, Maggie and I need to go to Oregon. I've been to Oregon. I love Oregon. I love Oregon and Washington. The Pacific Northwest is one of my favorite places in the country, despite the rainy weather. But Maggie's never been out there, so she might be excited to hear that she would be allowed to drive on the sidewalk as long as we watch out for the pedestrians. In Canton, Ohio, and I grew up in Cleveland. Canton's about an hour away from Cleveland, but apparently in Canton specifically, roller skaters and cars can't share the road. I don't know if that means that it's okay as long as they take their turns on the road, or if there are specific times of day when the roller skaters are allowed to be on the road, and then there are times of day when the cars are allowed to be on the road. But roller skaters and cars just cannot share the road. I guess they can share the road with bicycles, but not with roller skaters. We're going to take a quick break because some of these ones in California are just hilarious, and it's going to take a little bit more to get through some of those. And then we're going to jump into some of the sexist laws and my favorites, the laws related to animals. We'll be right back after this. Do you hate car shopping? Do you worry about being taken advantage of or about finding the right car at a great price? Buying a car can be a frustrating and time-consuming experience. But what if you could get a great deal without having to do a ton of research, without having to haggle, and without the fear of buying a lemon? You can. As your personal car shopper, the Car Chick will help you pick the perfect car based on your unique lifestyle, budget, and personality. She'll handle all of the legwork and negotiating for you. All you have to do is sign the papers and take the keys. It's that easy. To learn how the Car Chick can save you time, money, and hassle on your next car purchase, give us a call at 704-248-8706. That's 704-248-8706. Or visit us on the web at thecarchick.com.
Automatic? Automatic? We don't need no stinking automatic.
Straight Shift with the Car Chick.
Welcome back to the Straight Shift. Today we're talking about utterly ridiculous traffic laws that are, in fact, still on the books as of 2020. Why some of these were on the books at all at any point in history makes you scratch your head, but they are. We're talking about some of these laws that apparently have been implemented because people have no common sense or sense of self-preservation on their own, and California has quite a number of them. I guess you shouldn't be surprised. California's always been a wacky state. But specifically in the city of Glendale, which is one of the suburbs of Los Angeles, they have lots of earthquakes there. It is illegal to jump from motor vehicles moving at the speed of 65 miles per hour or higher. Note, the law says nothing whatsoever about the legality of jumping from vehicles going less than 65 miles an hour. So if you're going 60, maybe it's okay. I don't know. Sounds like a bad idea in general, but who is jumping from motor vehicles at 65 miles an hour? I mean, was this, kind of a stunt thing or an Evel Knievel thing? I don't know. But in the city of Eureka, it is illegal to use the road as a bed. You're not allowed to sleep in the middle of the road. Roads aren't that comfy anyway. Why would you sleep in the middle of the road? But in San Francisco, and having spent 4 years in the San Francisco Bay Area back when I was in college, this one, as ridiculous as it sounds, kind of just doesn't even surprise me. San Francisco is a really interesting and wonderful city, but it is illegal for a commercial business to buff or dry a car with used underpants. New underpants are fair game. And if you're just drying or buffing your car personally with your own used underpants, or even, I guess, someone else's used underpants, but you're not a commercial business, then it's perfectly okay. Keep in mind, underpants are actually a pretty good material to buff your car with because they tend to be made completely out of cotton, and especially men's underpants. Women's underpants, this isn't going to work so well. They're not as big, and unless they're the granny panties, they're just not going to work as well. A good pair of tighty whities is really good for buffing a car because it's almost like microfiber. But if you're a commercial detailing or any type of automotive business, you just can't do it with used underpants. In North Dakota, and this is a law that actually makes perfect sense, drivers are prohibited from accessing web pages while driving, or just when they're stopped at a traffic light or other temporary stop on the roads. This is obviously connected to their no texting while driving laws. But because they're one of the only states that specifies that you're also not allowed to access web pages, you know that somebody got their butt pulled over and got a ticket under the texting while driving law, and their lawyer went to court and said, my client was not texting, and I can prove it because there are no text messages sent or received during the time that they got the ticket. They were just simply browsing the web, and that is not illegal. Only texting is illegal. So, that's what happened. And they obviously just had to add that little caveat in there about also not accessing web pages. So if you're in the state of North Dakota, do not drive and prime. In Oklahoma, similarly, it's illegal to read a comic book while driving. All comic books? Now, what if you call it a graphic novel? I mean, is that also illegal? Apparently, it's perfectly okay to read newspapers, regular novels, any other type of book. Does it apply whether you're reading it in a paper copy or if you're reading it on your iPad or whatever? I don't know. Just don't read comic books while you're driving in Oklahoma. And finally, in New Hampshire, I love this one. It is illegal to inhale bus fumes with the intent of inducing euphoria. I guess because marijuana in New Hampshire is still illegal except for medical uses, you have to huff bus exhaust fumes to get high. I mean, seriously, just go next door to Vermont. Pot is perfectly legal there for recreational use. You do not need to be sniffing bus fumes to get your high on if you live in New Hampshire. Good grief, people. I mean, is it that bad living in New Hampshire? All right, let's talk about a couple of sexist laws. And these are obviously left over from, I hope anyway, but they're so funny that I wanted to mention them. In California, again, another weird California law, it's against the law for women to drive in a house coat through the Golden State. Do pajamas count, or is it specifically the garment that is referred to as a house coat? Because my mom would be in trouble. She is always wearing what is considered a house coat. I don't know that she's ever driven in one, and I really hope she hasn't, Mom. But it is illegal in California. I've driven there in my pajamas, come to think of it, because when I was in college, I'm sure I ran out in the middle of the night for some reason and was in my pajamas. I hope that wasn't illegal. Oh, well. Now, in Louisiana, and again, now we're talking southern states, so this doesn't remotely surprise me. Things are still a little backward down here sometimes, but in Louisiana, a woman's husband, if a woman's driving a motor vehicle down the road, her husband is required by law to walk in front of the car and wave a flag as she drives it to warn other drivers. Now, in my case, my husband would have to be waving the checkered flag and he'd have to be walking really damn fast. But, I should probably come with my own warning when I'm driving, but if it's going to be a flag, it better be the checkered flag. In Virginia, there's a city traffic law in a city called Waynesboro, where it's unlawful for a woman to drive in a motor vehicle on Main Street unless her husband is with her. And he has to be walking in front of the car, specifically waving a red flag. In racing, the red flag means that there is some sort of incident on the track, and you need to first check your mirrors, make sure nobody's right behind you to rear-end you, and then gently come to a controlled stop on the side of the track and wait to see the flag station to tell you that it's okay to go. Usually means somebody's crashed and they've got a vehicle out there. But in this case, it's clearly designed to be a warning, but again, in my case, it needs to be a checkered flag. Now we're going to go into some of my favorites. These are laws related to motor vehicles and traffic laws and animals. In the state of Utah, by law, birds have the right of way on all highways. They want to protect their birds. So if there's a bird on the highway, you got to stop and wait for the bird to do whatever the bird wants to do, because the bird has the right of way. In Alaska, it has been declared unlawful to tether your dog to the roof of the car. Who the hell is tethering a dog to the roof of the car? That's so cruel. Normally you're tethering the dog to the front of your sled to mush you through the snow. But I don't know, some jerk is tethering their dogs to the roof of the car in Alaska, and they had to pass a law. Now, note, there's no mention of any other types of animals. So apparently your cat, your ferret, a moose, you can tether to the roof of your car, but no dogs. In Florida, by law, you must feed the parking meter in a parking space if you tie an elephant, a goat, or an alligator to it. So you're not allowed to park your elephant, your goat, or your alligator in a parking space with a parking meter unless you feed that meter. Now, I would argue that you probably don't want to tether the goat and the alligator to the same parking meter at the same time, because then you're likely to come out of the store and find that you only have an alligator left. But just be sure you feed the meter no matter what you decide to do. In Montana, it's illegal to leave your sheep unattended in your truck. I'm assuming that probably applies to any type of vehicle, but if you got sheep, you're probably in a pickup truck, but don't leave them unattended, because you know how much trouble sheep get into when they're left to their own devices. It's fine to leave your dog unattended in the car. The dog knows how to behave himself. The sheep, they're going to cause so much trouble, so don't do it. Now, if you're in Nevada, it's illegal to ride a camel on the highway. Okay, Nevada is a desert state, so there could be camels, but you're just not allowed to ride them on the highway. If they escape from Circus in Las Vegas, as long as they stay off the highways, they're fine, but no camels on the highway. In Pennsylvania, oh, this one cracks me up, but it also explains a lot. There's a law that states that if you're driving on a country road at night, every mile you have to stop your car and shoot off a rocket to clear out any livestock from the roads. And then you have to look at your watch and allow them a full 10 minutes to disperse. This finally explains why every single mile in the state of Pennsylvania, there's a 24-hour fireworks shop. I never knew why that was true. It's so that you comply with the state laws and shoot the rockets off every mile to clear out the livestock. This is a really good business model, Pennsylvania. Good thinking. Now, in the state of Rhode Island, it's illegal to ride a horse on the highway for the purpose of racing or for testing the speed of the horse. Apparently, it's okay for all other horse-related uses and applications to put them on the highway, but you're just not allowed to race the horse or test their speed. So you're not allowed to time them. You're not allowed to have a start or finish line. No horse street racing in the state of Rhode Island. Now, the state of Tennessee, this is one of the ones that's really kind of making me scratch my head. It's illegal to shoot any game. So, okay, I'm fine with, I don't think it's very sporting to be able to shoot animals if you're hunting from your moving vehicle. It's just not sporting. But in Tennessee, while it's illegal to shoot any other type of animals or game from a moving vehicle other than whales, you can totally shoot whales legally from your moving vehicle in the state of Tennessee. Let's think about that. It's a landlocked state. Where in the world are you going to find a whale? I mean, are they going to have to install bulletproof glass at the aquarium in Chattanooga or something? I'm pretty sure that's the only whales in the entire state of Tennessee. So, yeah, somebody was clearly drinking the whiskey when they wrote that law. Finally, and this one is my absolute favorite, and quite frankly, this is the law that I heard about and caused me to do all this research and find out whether or not this is true. And yes, folks, it is true. As of 2020, it is still illegal in the entire state of Massachusetts to drive with a gorilla in your back seat. Perfectly fine, apparently, to drive with the gorilla in the front seat. I would assume that the gorilla would need to be wearing his or her seat belt. I personally think it would be better to require them to sit in the back seat because if the gorilla is in the front seat, they're going to be changing the air conditioning. They're going to be messing with your radio stations. Gorillas are curious. They are smart. And their hands are just as dexterous as humans. They have those opposable thumbs. So they're going to be getting into the glove box, stashing their banana peels in there. And the next thing you know, your car's going to stink like rotten banana. They're going to mess with all the controls. They're going to be screwing around with your Apple CarPlay. I don't understand why Massachusetts will not change this law to make it illegal for the gorilla to be in the front seat. It's way safer for the gorilla to be in the back seat. It just doesn't make any sense to me. Why they needed a law regarding gorillas anywhere in your car, I'm just not going to ask. So, if you're driving through the state of Massachusetts with your pet gorilla, be sure the gorilla is in the front seat. Now, maybe they can be in the back of the car in the cargo area, but that's not really safe. Maybe if they were in a crate like a dog, but I'm not sure you're going to find a crate big enough for a gorilla unless it's a little gorilla. So I would just say, keep the gorilla in the front seat. Make sure they're buckled in properly. Don't let them eat bananas in the car. And just hope that they don't, reach over and honk your horn or try and change all of your radio stations. I'm pretty sure that the police and your prosecutors in most of these states, at least they might have enough common sense not to actually prosecute most of these laws. But if you run into an instance where you are actually given a ticket and charged with violating one of these laws, I'm sure you'll be able to fight it and get it to go away. But I really want to hear about it first. So if you have ever gotten a ticket for violating a ridiculous traffic law in any state, please go to my website, thecarchick.com, and click on the contact tab and send me a message. I absolutely want to hear about it, or you can leave it information in the comments below, especially if you're listening to this podcast on YouTube. But I'm just curious, has anyone ever gotten a ticket for violating an absolutely ridiculous traffic law somewhere in the United States, or for those of you listening outside the United States? I know some other countries have some pretty ridiculous laws too. I want to hear about it. In the meantime, folks, please obey all of the traffic laws, whether it relates to sheep, gorillas, or waving flags, and drive safely. I'm out of here, folks. Happy leap year.
The Straight Shift podcast is copyright LeeAnn Shattuck, The Car Chick, 2017. All views expressed by guest and or co-hosts are those of the guest and or co-hosts, and not necessarily those of LeeAnn Shattuck or The Car Chick.